Hey cousins, happy Tuesday. I hope you had a great weekend and make sure to call your mother on Sunday. Now, while I did spend some virtual time with the woman who literally birthed me, I also had the pleasure of spending some time on Mother's Day with the woman who practically birthed me. So, shout out to Paris Hilton. Okay, just look at that. That's hot. That is hot. We spoke extensively about using your voice, Yves Saint Laurent, and staying skinny. So I just have to make sure y'all knew because I don't play about Paris Hilton. But in other news, shout out to Charlie Kirk for having me at his American comeback tour stop over at UC Riverside. We have a clip that's going viral, so be sure to share it later because the libs are mad because statistics are not racist, which is a major theme of today's episode as we discuss the new viral debate about black fatigue and how it ties into the anger towards President Trump for rescuing over 50 white South Africans from persecution. I also have so much respect for Charlie and what he does because he is going to campuses and is really shifting Gen Z back to traditional values. So much so that a new study shows that Gen Z men are back in church. And while I love this, what's concerning is that women are leaving the church to either worship secularism, feminism, wokeism, or notoriously Islam. We'll be discussing what's going on with Western society, and no shade, I am not converting to Islam. Y'all know the vibes. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Welcome to Respectfully. We are so back, and I just again have to shout out Charlie Kirk because I had so much fun at that event. I have always wanted to go to one of his notorious campus tours, and here's a short little recap of what it was like.
Charlie's in the building! Walk with me!
I was so outside. I do it for the people.
Let's go! Any day.
Oh, Louis Cage. Oh. I had so many cousins there. I really love y'all. I really love meeting you guys in person. So when you do see me, please don't just stare at me weirdly. Actually say hi because I love meeting you guys. But wow, that was such a good time, and I'm definitely going to be doing a compilation video because you guys loved that video of me reacting to woke TikTok. So I definitely want to do a video where I'm reacting to some of Charlie's debates because I was gagged. I couldn't believe how deranged some of those people were. But all that to say, today we are talking about some polarizing topics per usual because it is Respectfully. And again, I want you guys to be active in the chats. Be sure to be sending in your super chats, especially over on my personal YouTube if you are not already over there. And first, we have to talk about black fatigue. And I kept seeing these tweets going viral on Twitter where everybody was talking about black fatigue. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And I'm like, well, I'm black and I'm fatigued and I'm tired all the time. And maybe it's because I refuse to drink coffee too often, but my matcha gets the job done. So I thought it had to do with that, but it does not at all. So here's a video that is going viral that has everybody talking about black fatigue.
Who called a 5-year-old a racial slur. My first impression after watching the video, a little bit of white trash. I have to be honest, the kid was 5. I have worked with 5-year-olds for the last 15 years. Absolutely everything they do is out of pocket. They're like little unhinged drunk people. Nothing they do makes sense. A 5-year-old is capable of rifling through somebody's bag and taking things that don't belong to them. Ask any kindergarten teacher. But I realize why so many people are wanting to defend this. Because black fatigue is real. I think society as a whole is there. We are just so unbelievably fed up with the ghetto ratchet behavior, entitlement, the victimhood, that they want to praise this woman. But what she did is not praiseworthy. But also on the same hand, please remember that every day that us white people get on this app, we get called racial slurs every single day. So if you don't want to be called a racial slur, you also have to stop calling people racial slurs. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. But for the love of God, please leave the children out of it. Adults are stupid. They're going to do stupid things. But you're a different level of stupid when you bring kids into it. Thanks for coming to my
So here she is talking about the hood rattery, quite literally. And if you didn't catch the full gist, what she's referring to, as we talked about like a week or so ago, where I reacted to Matt Walsh's reaction, is how there's this huge scandal going on where this woman called a young black kid at the N word with the hard R, and then people flocked to give her all this money. And what a lot of it comes down to is there's this trend where there's a lot of videos going viral right now on Twitter with this trend of black fatigue, of people talking or like showing black people just doing the most, being hood rats, doing hood rattery, just being wildly rude and violent and all these different things, and people of other races standing up to them. And I get it. So the black fatigue is pretty much tired of this ghetto hood rattery culture. As you guys know, I am. I think black fatigue as a term, while it is, people are always going to put it that way to build shock value or to be more broad in who they're encompassing with it. But it's like, I have ghetto hood rat fatigue. I also have white liberal fatigue. I have illegal immigrant fatigue. I'm tired of a lot of these people. And while I see a lot of people upset about this term and because it is being called black fatigue, at the same time, I get it. I get it, because there is just so much audacity that has been coming from the black community ever since BLM. It's like BLM had black people so gassed up and audacious that people just really started thinking they could get away with everything. Like being black became a crutch to get away with the worst possible behaviors and the rudest personality traits that any other demographic, if they did, that people would be absolutely disgusted by. And I stand behind the expression that I said before, how racism is laziness. I feel like when you are racist, it's because you are too lazy to analyze people for their individualistic characteristics. So you feel the need to just group everybody together. But even the most active, not lazy people in the world get tired. People get tired when they constantly see this kind of behavior coming from the black community at a disproportionate amount. So again, I get it. And I see how much worse it is becoming, and how toxic traits coming from the black community continue to be put on a pedestal, quite literally. Did y'all see the woman of width statue? Look at this woman of width. Okay, are we really doing this? The way I thought this was AI, I didn't talk about this for like a week because I swore up and down it wasn't real. I couldn't believe it. Okay, so we are now making statues of big backed black women, this woman of width. This is what we're idolizing. This is supposed to be representation and inclusivity. Some things need to be excluded. Okay, we should not be idolizing fat black people. Like, what is the point of that? Even Al Sharpton went and lost weight because he knew it wasn't the way to live his life. Okay, so to sit here and to make a statue where we're telling little black girls, little obese black girls, hey, we see you, obese black girls. We know that you can't push the plate away. We know that you're out here eating nothing but fried foods. Now you have a statue that represents you? Not everything needs to be a statue. Okay, dare I say this is more audacious than that might be a stretch. I was gonna say the George Floyd statue, this might be worse, but no, I think the George Floyd statue still was like peak disgusting, but it at least made more sense. This is just a random display celebrating obesity within the black community, and this is the type of things that I am exhausted of. This is black fatigue to me, okay? And we've talked about before how people and their slavery diet, and they try to sit there and act like it's okay to justify why so many black women and black people are obese is because of the trauma of racism. It's like, no, you need to eat less. You need to stop eating so much fried food. Shout out to black women, but in a special shout out to skinny black women, healthy black women. Stop making statues of toxic behavior. Okay, George Floyd, toxic behavior. This woman, toxic behavior. Start putting statues up of people that actually should be looked up to. Okay, because the audacity is out of control. Like, do y'all remember this viral photo of this woman a while ago? Oh, this big backed woman who said that people owed her money to PayPal her? Do we have that? Yeah. Her hips alone take up half my screen. This is crazy. all white people are racist, PayPal me. And y'all call me a grifter because I'm Uncle Tom's favorite nephew, and because I'm low-key a coon, y'all try to say that I'm a grifter. Oh no, y'all have never seen me be like, oh, I'm black, so Venmo and PayPal me. Oh no, that is a grift. This woman, the only way I would PayPal that woman if it's for a tummy tuck. And the gag is I wouldn't even do that because she needs to go get on a treadmill and eat less. Okay? Nobody owes you anything. White people don't owe you a single thing. This is tiresome. This is black fatigue. I hate to say it, but I get it. Okay? And we're constantly demanding more from white people while simultaneously bringing so many problems to white people. And I'm not condemning all of black people, because I shouldn't even say we, because it doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply to most black people. But there are so many audacious black people that are so loud and saying all the things that are owed to them and that they're entitled to. Please, okay? Please get your life together and stop expecting so much of other communities and thinking that your behavior you can just get away with. Shout out to my friend Emily Saves America. You know, she's a friend of the show. I have been with her in person or like in public where we're going places, and it's like I will see random black women be so unbelievably rude to her and then smile at me. It's like the weirdest thing that I have ever seen, and this is what is bringing black fatigue. Okay? We need to stop supporting degenerate people in our community and paying dust to those who actually do things that are positive. Because like there's this guy, King Randall, Emerging King, I believe is his username. I love the work he's doing, where he is like teaching black youth, you know, table manners and business skills and practical hands-on skills and all these different things. And I see the comments calling him corny. You're calling him corny because he's pouring into black youth. Okay, I need to show you guys some videos of him eventually, of just like the amazing work that King Randall is doing with his school, just emerging these black kings. This is something that I love to see, people pouring into black youth in a positive way. But yet you have people online that want to say that his work is corny. Yet those same people are glorifying people like Carmelo Anthony, who I still am baffled by the amount of people in a tribalistic manner went and tried to support this guy. And it's again, and I clocked it from the beginning, that if white conservatives started going after Carmelo Anthony for being black rather than just being a degenerate teen, it was going to cause a backlash. But nevertheless, regardless of what led to what, two wrongs don't make a right. But what is dead wrong, as wrong as it possibly could be, is what Carmelo Anthony did. Okay? And I will continue to be disgusted by that, and disgusted by the fact that so many black people stood behind Carmelo Anthony and his actions. Okay? The tribalism is getting out of control, and racial tribalism can be very dangerous when it goes unchecked, which leads me into what's happening in South Africa. Okay? I have never been that familiar with what was going on in South Africa. I knew that there was apartheid. I knew that there was all these different rhetoric, but it's really it's not my business. Okay. I can only deal with so many foreign policies in so many nations, but I really started doing a deep dive into South Africa and realized it is really scary over there. Okay, so a lot of people think that there's still an apartheid there, but no, there was a 46-year apartheid that ended not that long ago over in South Africa. And it does have lingering disparities where there's certain privileges that go to certain white groups, such as the white, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, Afrikaners. The white Afrikaners that are there, they were in a position of privilege for a long time, so they still do own a disproportionate amount of the land. Okay, that's kind of just what happens when you have an apartheid, when you have a country that was at a time racist and built on racism. And now it's flipping in a way that is way too aggressive. So the Black economic empowerment movement has done a lot to close the gap between white and black people over in Africa, but it didn't stop there. It didn't stop with just giving black people the tools to be successful. It has become this thing where now white South Africans are fighting for their lives, literally. They're getting attacked. They can't get jobs. The farmers are being unalived, you know, and don't clock me for saying unalived. You know, I can't say the real word on YouTube, but, you know, due to racism or I can't say it too often on YouTube, but, you know, due to racism and there's all this evidence of them trying to persecute these white South Africans. They're going and confiscating their land, and they're really just putting these white South Africans through hell for things that happened before majority of them were even born. Okay, and it doesn't just stop there. It's not just like people calling each other mean names. It's not like little childish racism like we more often than not see here in America. It is like actually frightening what is happening over there. So there's this economic freedom fighter named Julius that is calling for violence very openly against the farmers, the white farmers over in South Africa. Here's a clip.
Konto alliance shoot to kill Hamaza, kill the poor, the
Always our
farmer,
farmers.
kill the poor, the farmer. Brr,
This is crazy.
pa, brr, pa, pa. Attention.
You know, I'm not going to lie. I thought that a lot of white people were exaggerating when they said that there was this effort to persecute white South Africans. I thought it was just like being overdramatic. And then I saw this. Shout out to Mr. Rodriguez that showed me this clip, and I was baffled, absolutely baffled. That's a stadium full of people dancing and chanting to unalive these farmers simply for being white. Okay, and you know, it's this economic freedom fighter movement is a far left opposition party known for its radical economic policies and how anti-Western they have become. And they're talking about the Boers, however you say it. They are descendants of Dutch-speaking settlers who colonized parts of South Africa back in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. So a lot of them, their descendants are who are the Afrikaners today, the white South Africans that are today's topic of discussion. Now, you would think that there's going to be, obviously there was backlash. You know, when Julius was up there chanting to murder these people, there of course was backlash, but he stood 10 toes down on his hateful rhetoric. Here's another clip.
That is a court decision that must be respected. Those who have appealed it, they must go and fight it in court. We won, and we shall sing this song in line with the court decision. The Court of South Africa, an independent court, has made a declaration on this matter and is closed. This is sponsored outrage by Helen Zille. You know, black people, there are some black, clever blacks who are told by Helen Zille to get angry. Yo, Helen is angry, now we must be angry also. I don't even want to talk about that illiterate John Steenhuisen. If Helen was opposed to this for real, why didn't Helen join the case? Why didn't the DA join the case when I was taken to Equality Court? Why didn't the Freedom Front join the case if they are genuine?
The sign language
So I'm not going to over-explain myself.
She said boom, 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 boom. And the well, let me not talk about these sign language people like that, child. But, you know, this is what I'm talking about. This is the type of hateful rhetoric that they're spreading. He has no shame, no apology for the fact that he is a major influential activist and political figure and still calling for the death of so many of these white farmers, these white people living in South Africa. And you would think that the left, who's always wanted to rescue people that are, you know, a victim class and a minority group, as these white people are in South Africa, they are the minority. The left is more mad that the refugees are right. The left is more mad that the refugees are white rather than celebrating that 50 plus people have been saved from persecution in a way that is legal and via due process. And really, that's a big part of why they're actually mad. They're actually mad because, one, they're white, and because, two, they came here legally. Okay, this is not the same as the people who are breaking into our country illegally. This is not the same. These people can, and look, they're already holding American flags. You have people who bring their dusty selves through our border and then don't even want to hold an American flag. They want to bring their own flag. If your own flag represents a country that you love so much, then go back. You don't have to be here. But here you have these white South Africans who are grateful to be here, came here legally, and have been saved from murder and from persecution. This is not the same. Okay, and then you have these people who are constantly trying to say that this is about race and that they're only being rescued because they're white. It really shows me that y'all don't do a lick of research before you start making these claims online. Okay, y'all are going to stop calling my president racist. Donald Jaquan Trump has rescued so many refugees from non-white countries. If we're going to go off the statistics, if we're going to look at the facts of the matter, based on country of origin data, there have been, during Trump's last presidency, there was an estimated 101,000 refugees that were rescued, and 86% of the, or sorry, no, 118,000 refugees in total, and then 101,000 of them roughly were non-white. So 86% of the refugees that Trump saved during his last administration were non-white. Okay, these are people who came from the Democratic Republic of Congo, about 15,000 of them, from Myanmar, about 12,000 of them, from Iraq, that's about 10,000. And then you compare that to the roughly 16,000 from Ukraine, which is predominantly white. So if you look at the facts, white people are definitely the minority. This was a very targeted effort to save these people that are being immediately murdered and persecuted. Okay, there are memorials out there where you see these crosses that represent all of the different white farmers that have been murdered due to race. And the evidence that they leave at these crime scenes make it very clear that it is due to race. Okay, each one of those crosses represents a white farmer that has been killed. This is crazy. So crazy. And the fact that people are trying to act like this isn't happening is frightening, or like it's okay because they're white. Are you really that hateful? And then there's other factors that play into this, because again, I hate this notion that we have to tie race into everything that doesn't even have anything to do with race. Okay, because another reason why we were able to bring these South Africans over here so quickly, according to White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, the South African applicants were much easier to vet and to bring over here quickly because South Africa has stable documentation systems, unlike these war-torn countries and regions like Sudan. Okay, do you know how long it takes to vet somebody from Sudan compared to South Africa? Okay, so let's look at that fact. Then there's also the fact of their capability of assimilation. Okay, because again, these people were not just brought here because they're white. They were brought here because they can assimilate to America more easily. You already see that they're holding American flags. They can speak English. I'm pretty sure all of the ones that got brought over, but majority of that demographic speaks fluent English. And they have similar values. They already practice in their communities, freedom of speech, property rights, constitutional beliefs. So to sit here and try to act like all of that is irrelevant is crazy. Okay, and being honest, like, it has nothing to do with economics. This narrative that refugees has to only do with being poor is also a weird narrative that started because I believe woke ideology and people being so afraid of people that aren't dirt poor, but unless they're donating to the Democrat Party, but that's conversation for another day. But a lot of these Afrikaners, these white South Africans, they are historically privileged minority. So they are middle class, most of them. So they, again, are used to Western norms and cultural traditions. A lot of them actually descend from Dutch Reformed faiths and Protestants. So they understand Christian traditions and the nuclear family structure that align with mainstream society and our values. Okay, which we're going to get a lot more into today, because unlike, say, Islamic refugees from Sudan, those religions practice, ideas and perspectives and have traditions that are very different from what the US has. Again, we are not a multicultural country. We are a diverse country. There's a difference. Multicultural is when you see all these different cultures that are coexisting, but they're not deeply intertwined. That's where you have nations where they have a bunch of different languages and there's a lot more separation and segregation in their country. We are a diverse country. In order to remain a diverse country, we have to have certain elements of assimilation and of cultural understanding of Judeo-Christian values. Doesn't mean you have to be religious. It helps, but you at least have to understand that there are certain things that we just do not do here. Certain elements of decorum. Okay, so then you also look into it like their careers, from an educational and professional standpoint. A lot of these middle class people have backgrounds in skills that we need here in America, such as farming, running businesses, technical fields, all these different industries that we can actually utilize here. Okay, their education is similar to what we have here. We're not raising terrorists over here. Not saying that all the other nations of a certain religion are, but y'all know what I mean. But all that to say, as we're talking about the importance of Judeo-Christian values and just what that looks like, you have to keep all these factors in mind. Okay. So to sum this all up and how it ties into the Black fatigue, first of all, the Black fatigue is this notion that if it doesn't support Black people and it isn't in Black interests and immediately appealing to Black people or to various minority groups, particularly usually Black though, then it's deemed as racist and as a terrible thing. And people try to have this mindset now looking over at South Africa, so much so that they have no sense of humanity when it comes to these people that are being persecuted. And I'm exhausted of that. I understand Black fatigue, and I understand why my president went and rescued these people from South Africa. So, you know what? It is what it is. People are going to stay mad, but at the end of the day, I'm going to remain happy and grateful that there are 50 to 59, depending where you look, that there are multiple people who have had their lives saved from racial injustice and persecution. Now, when we get into this whole conversation about Judeo-Christian values, just as a reminder, America does not have an official state religion. So we're technically not a Christian country. We're not a Jewish country. We are a secular nation. However, we are founded on Judeo-Christian values, which provides this moral framework for individual liberty and the belief that all people are created equal under God. These principles are rooted in biblical teachings and have shaped what our Constitution is, and that makes our Constitution this living, breathing document. And we continue to guide our nation's commitment to justice and personal responsibility because of Judeo-Christian values. And, there's this shared ethical foundation that we have here that emphasizes love, compassion, integrity, and justice, and this belief in a higher power. So that's what makes America as great as it is, having those values. At PragerU, we talk a lot about Judeo-Christian values for that exact reason. I highly, highly encourage you to go watch some of our most iconic 5-minute videos on PragerU.com that talk about Judeo-Christian values and what would happen to our society and the way our nation would crumble, and really the entire world would crumble, if we were not based on Judeo-Christian values, or if we continue to allow those values to slip away. So as we're seeing people fight to bring these back, as we're seeing Charlie Kirk literally doing the Lord's work and going around to these college campuses and educating them on Judeo-Christian values, it's certainly working. We've already heard how Gen Z, especially Gen Z men, are becoming the most conservative generation, and honestly, probably in America's history, but it's getting there. Gen Z men are really standing on business when it comes to bringing back these traditional values. And with that, young men are now leading a religious resurgence, according to Axios. So Axios has this article out that I thought was really interesting that I was reading this morning and talking to, shout out to CJ Pearson. I believe he's talking about this on Fox tonight. He's going to be talking about just this resurgence of young men going to church. There has been a decades-long decline that has finally stalled, where many young people just were not going to church. And each age group has become more and more less likely to go to church and less Christian than the one before it. So for perspective of that, I have some stats here. Americans born in the 70s are 63% Christian, and the 80s are 53% Christian, and the 90s are 46% Christian. But there has been no decline between the 90s to the 2000s, and Americans born in the 2000s are also 46% Christian. So while it hasn't necessarily gone up yet, it's stopped declining. And to see that halt is really, really just it's encouraging. Makes me a lot more optimistic about the future of our country. So we have these Gen Zers, especially Gen Z men, who are actually more likely to attend weekly religious services than the millennials, and even than young Gen Xers, which was really shocking to me. We have some stats here if we can pull up this chart. And unfortunately, it shows that as more young men are starting to go back to church, and we see this rebound, and we see there's fewer and fewer people who never attend church. For men, the women are on the opposite trajectory. We see that young women are starting to stop going to church, and it makes sense. When you really break it down and you think about just like this red pill bro movement that has started, and how there are so many people in Gen Z who either love President Trump, or they love PragerU, or they love So many of these different commentators, Joe Rogan, all these different people. Not saying that, Joe Rogan is the most conservative person in the world, but he's at least getting people to be open to ideas of conservative and traditional values again. And the reason why I feel like this shift is happening where the women are going the opposite direction is because so many of them are starting to worship, secularism or feminism or wokeism. And I just find that really interesting, but again, it makes sense. You see Gen Z men who are wanting to escape this toxic dogma and this like progressive ideology that has been getting shoved down our throats, where they're constantly attacking masculinity and where, secular culture has demonized traditional masculinity, wanting to raise a family. And you have these feminists that are constantly telling women that they don't need a man and that they shouldn't ever, telling women that they need to focus more on being boss babes than ever having a family or doing any of that, and making it seem like you're a loser if you go and you have a family. Like, I had someone recently tell me like, oh yeah, I'm so glad I'm not a loser who goes and like gets married and has kids in their 30s. And I was like, what? I was like, is that really what the norm has become as a society? So Gen Z is really starting to reject that. And they're tired of being demonized for being men and for standing on principles that men have always stood on. And where they find affirmation is traditional male roles. Who could have thought of that? Who could have thought that the things that made men feel like they're being fulfilled are the same roles that have been there since the beginning of time, where they can be protectors, where they can be leaders, where they can lead their family, take them to church, and be rooted in these biblical teachings. Now, as positive as that is, unfortunately, or shouldn't say that because then people are going to be mad at me. But for similar reasons that people are converting to Christianity, you also see people converting to Islam, but on a more, trying to choose my words carefully, let's just say on an interesting note. The reason that so many people are going over to Islam, especially oddly, a lot of women who reject feminism, is because they want that structure back. I will say, first of all, before I even dive too deep into that, I just want to emphasize that there is a reason that we are a Judeo-Christian country and that we're not an Islamic submission Judeo and Christian country, because Judaism and Christianity are much more accepting by nature of, people's freedoms and people's liberties, while in Islam, you're supposed to submit to Allah. You're supposed to submit to Sharia law. And that's very much the antithesis of Western society, which some people could argue it comes with good structure. And in a perfect world where everybody's on their best behavior, it would work. But the thing is when you allow Sharia law and all of this to take over, it inherently becomes extreme if you follow the rules of Islam properly. So there's this concept called abrogation, also known as nashk, Naskh. Not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but abrogation is this Islamic principle where whatever is later in the Quran and in their revelations will supersede the earlier ones. So in other words, if a later verse blatantly contradicts what's in an earlier verse, the later verse is what takes precedence as God's final guidance, especially when it comes to legal or ethical matters. Now, why this matters is because a lot of the more extreme verses that are in the Quran actually come later in the Quran. So the extremists are going to favor the later, more aggressive words, or that the more aggressive messaging that is calling for defensive warfare and claiming that they nullify what was peaceful in the earlier parts of the Quran. And again, this is not an attack on Muslims. This is not an attack on those who are Islamic. This is just me saying objective facts of this is how the Quran works if you follow it properly, which is why you have these hyper-religious extreme Islamic groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Hamas that go and they cherry pick the final verses like Surah 9.5, or however you would say that 9.5. I guess it would just be 9.5, like if it's a Bible verse. I'm not too familiar, but these later verses in the Surah, they are inside of the Quran, they are used to justify violence, and they ignore the context of when these words were written. Okay, so a lot of the Quran, while it does talk about peace, the later half or the latter half does not. So when we talk about Sharia law, because a lot of people mention Sharia law, but I don't think a lot of people even understand what the real definition of Sharia law is. So it's this religious and legal framework that is derived again from Islamic texts like the Quran, and it's about governing personal conduct, family matters, and criminal justice. And they often conflict with basic human rights, and they enforce these extremely harsh punishments or restrictions on freedoms, particularly for women and minorities, which is why it's so ironic to me that you see so many women that are now converting over to Islam. So an example of some of these punishments, it's like if somebody is caught stealing, they are then victim of amputation, which some people really think that that's justified, but that's crazy to me. Like if you go and you steal a pack of fruit snacks, like it's ironic that the same Marxists that will be like, oh, black people deserve to go steal from these stores because of reparations, they will support something like Sharia law, which would say that if you go and you steal something, that you should have your hand amputated, or if you say something that you're not supposed to say, or something against the government or against Allah, then you are to have your tongue amputated. Or if you are caught with doing adultery, which a lot of you are cheating on your husbands and wives as I type this, that you're supposed to be subject to public flogging, as seen in many interpretations of the law in parts of Saudi Arabia and of Taliban ruled Afghanistan. I want to give you a couple examples of what these verses say. So Surah 9:5, the verse of the sword says, unalive these polytheists wherever you find them. Extremists will often cite that as this universal command that you need to go and off people that are treaty breakers or that are not following your religion of Islam or their religion of Islam. It says, fight people of the book until they pay the jizya, and that has been used to attack Jews and Christians. There's strike their necks. That is stated many times, strike their necks, secure their bonds, which basically has been used to unalive people and then go steal from them, kind of like what we saw on October 7th. Then you have seize them and unalive them, and that's often misused and abused as another reason to go and attack. That's Surah 47:4, 489, 812, 929, 9:5. Like there's so many of these that are inside of the Quran that is leading to people taking these extreme measures when it comes to religion. And you really have two types of people that are watching this happen because it's really prominent in the UK. It's extremely prominent in the UK. And you have these two types of women. Can we first show the white woman, this white woman that converted to Islam? First of all, I'm pretty sure her hair is supposed to be covered. You're a white woman who has manipulated you. Don't call yourself Swedish anymore. Fake Muslim, cover yourself. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's part of the rules. Poor little girl. So here she is dancing and cutting a little rug, celebrating, her conversion to Islam, which again, I am not attacking Islamic people. I'm just saying there are objectively some problematic principles inside of the faith that are being practiced out by extremists. But again, if you are following Nashk properly, you are supposed to be extreme according to the rules of the Quran. Then you have other people like this. This black woman was very outspoken when asked how she feels about the growing Islamic movement inside of the UK.
I honestly think that wherever you go in the world, you should respect the rules of the land. Right. You can't try to take over. Okay. And I think the mentality that says not all Muslims, some Muslims believe that Sharia law should be the main law in the UK. Right. It's too far. It's just taking it too far. Yeah. So if I went to an Islamic country, I wouldn't try to impose my values on that country. Yeah. I genuinely believe in live and let live, but you shouldn't try to convert. I don't want to be converted either. I don't want to be taken over, and I don't want to be converted.
And I love this. Shout out to black women, even in the UK, because she's keeping it real. She's not, and again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I really am not. Okay, I'm saying all this respectfully. So I'm trying to explain just some of the concerns that I have to see this happen in Western society. Okay. And as this woman says, like living over in the UK, it's getting kind of crazy. Okay, so here's just kind of this current status quo of what's happening in the UK. There are thousands of mosques. Depending where you look, it's between 1,500 to 3,000 mosques that are over in the UK, which isn't even that big of a country. All UK schools are legally required to teach religious education, aka Islam. You have the most common baby name in London for many years, and one of the most common baby names all over the UK now is Muhammad. There are so many converts over to Islam while Christianity is drastically declining in the UK. And then you have the mayors of London, Oxford, Luton and Rockdale, Oldham, Brighton and Hove are all Muslim, or at least were recently. Then you have also the Secretary of State and Justice and the Lord Chancellor, who are also Muslim. You have Prince Harry's lawyer, who is Muslim. You have the King of England, who is hosting iftar dinners during Ramadan. So again, I'm not saying that there's something inherently wrong with this. I think that Islamic people have a role in Western government too. I think that their influence is important, especially if you pride yourself on being a diverse country. I think it is important to have their voices heard and for them to be a part of the discussion. So don't take me saying what I'm saying as an attack on them. What I am saying is that the proportionality is really concerning when you see this movement pushing for Sharia law. I don't have an issue with Islamic people. I have an issue with Sharia law taking over Western society and taking away my rights and taking away women's rights and your rights. And whoever you are, your rights are going to be stripped if you allow Sharia law to come over to Western society. That's what we need to talk about. Okay, you see so many white women converting to Islam, and it reflects really this broader cultural crisis in the West where people feel that they have been failed by the religion of wokeism and the lack of strength from Judeo-Christian leaders. Christians, we got to step up. Okay, what it really comes down to is we have to step up and become a lot more bold and vocal about the principles that we stand for. You know, people are so afraid to critique Islam because they don't want to be canceled, and I get it. You're afraid of like looking like you're Islamophobic, because I'm not Islamophobic. I ain't scared of you people. I ain't scared of nobody, okay, except the Lord. But when it comes to Sharia law, I am afraid of the thought of that being here. That's real oppression. That's real danger. And you know, modern feminism has ultimately left women so spiritually bankrupt that they're pushing for Sharia law and they're pushing for Islamic principles because they at least have structured gender roles. Okay, so many of these people have been misguided by this woke rebellion that they have now let their own rebellion against progressive ideologies that has led them into this love for Islam. And also you have to think too, it's like a lot of them are pushing constantly to have a bunch of kids. Okay, in Christian faith, you see a lot of people now that are saying, wait. I'm a firm believer of don't rush into getting married and having kids when you're not ready. A lot of kids and a lot of people just are not mature enough and ready for that. And it's hard these streets dating. Okay, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite. I'm single and I have no kids, but don't try me because I got my options. Some of y'all don't. And some of y'all need to work on that, but that's a whole other conversation. Because I just know y'all gonna try to clock me. But you see that there is this high level of reproduction that's happening from Muslim populations in the UK and in the US, and it's creating this also when you see like all the immigration that's happening from Islamic nations, it's creating this societal pressure for the societal pressure, dare I say, of more romantic relationships that lead to usually women converting to Islam, because I don't think you see as many men converting to Islam. You see a lot of women converting to Islam, especially because of, again, they're getting into relationships with Islamic men and they feel the pressure that they need to also be a part of that religion. And it gives them security because they feel protected. They feel secure. They feel like their gender roles are there. But what a lot of them aren't realizing is that, and again, they can do that if they want, but if you push for that to be the norm in our society, you are going to see the dangers that come with it, that you see in a lot of these war-ridden countries and a lot of these radical extremist countries that are being overruled and run over by terrorists. And I'm terrified of the thought of that coming over here. So I guess my final message that I have to say about this is more Christians need to get back to having kids and standing on business and getting married and, fighting endlessly to maintain the values and the principles that we have built this country upon. And I don't think that there's anything that should be viewed as controversial about that. And I feel like it would be an injustice if I didn't bring in Mr. Rodriguez to speak on this, because that's one of my favorite God-fearing Christian men I've ever met. Mr. Rodriguez, do you agree?
So I wholeheartedly agree. One of the key reasons I would agree is because according to the Christian doctrine, the faith that I hold to, it's important, number one, that we're not afraid to be fruitful and multiply. I know that the world speaks of, oh, you're not going to be able to afford it, your life's going to be over. We do not conform to the world. We are not to be conformed by the world. We hold to Scripture, which is the Bible. That is our authority. The world is not the authority. Mm-hmm. So when people are afraid to reproduce in a marital setting, you have to think to yourself, wow, like there's a reason why we have that. It's to preserve and to conserve this value system. But not only that, if we are the light of the world, this world is going to get a lot darker if we don't reproduce. And as believers begin to shrink, that light begins to dim. Mm-hmm. So we need to keep that at the forefront of our mind, is that, hey, we got to be that light. And so don't walk in fear. Don't listen to what the world says. Don't conform. Our citizenship is in heaven, not here on earth. And so we look at this scripture and we take it all for what it is. And so I would just say a word of encouragement, really. I know it sounds scary and all that, like, oh, have kids, all these things. But the beauty of it is a more enriched society. I mean, look at America. Look at how we are prospering and how we've prospered because of our foundations and how our founding fathers, maybe not all of them were devout followers or believers, but they understood the Bible to be the supreme moral authority. And they understood that this one, out of all the other ones, this one was superior. So I think there's something to that. And I appreciate the founding fathers' wisdom for looking into Scripture and understanding there's something to this aside from every other belief system. And I think we should recognize that and just come back to Scripture and see what it says about these matters.
Amen to that. One thing about Mr. Rodriguez, he's going to give you a word. He's going to bring the gospel to you.
Always, come on. To God be the glory.
And to glory be God.
That's right.
I don't think there's a better note that we could end the show on today. So thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for that beautiful word. And shout out to Mrs. Rodriguez before y'all start getting slick ideas. He is off the market. That ding was for her. Shout out to the Rodriguez family, child. And, thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Respectfully. Please let me know what you guys think of this conversation, because I know it was all spicy. You know the vibes. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, do everything we can so we can keep growing the family dinner table of cousins. And I will see you guys on Thursday.